I'm Steve with Tabletop Tastings, and this is another episode of Whiskey Drams with Steve. And I am super excited to have my first guest appearance, and this one is a really good one. So Tim Wilson is a master distiller blender from the Wayne Gretzky Distillery in Niagara-on-the-Lake here in Ontario. Tim and I met a little while ago through a mutual club that we're part of, which is the Whiskey Explorers Society. And it really is just a group of whiskey enthusiasts that look at reviews and just chat with each other. And so that's how Tim and I met. And then Tim is really the first master of anything, really, that I've met. And so he totally was not a letdown at all. Hailing from Australia, Tim, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Steve. Appreciate it.
I'm really thank you for your time and looking forward to having a little chat with you. So, can you tell us a little bit about yourself coming from Australia into Canada? How'd that happen?
Yeah, I mean, it was funny. I was doing the math recently on how long I've been in the beverage alcohol industry, and it's bordering line on a quarter century. Probably next year is how long I've been in
Wow.
beverage alcohol. So I kind of got started quite young. I had a big kind of interest in chemistry, math while I was in high school, but I also had an interest in brewing beer as well. I started kind of there, and we started brewing beer with friends in our local neighborhood. And I kind of wanted to then take that a little bit further and explore the opportunity of whether pursuing that as a career towards early university. And at that time, back in Australia, a lot of the head brewers and guys who kind of ran those big Carlton United breweries and Foster's, they all had degrees in winemaking just due to the strong biochemistry and microbiology. So I ventured down that path and went into winemaking. That was would have went back to you in 2003, and then finished the program. But as part of that, I kind of started venturing over to Canada. So with winemaking, you've got your seasons. And so with the seasons in Australia and Canada being flipped, I would follow the seasons and do a harvest in Australia, then come back over to Canada. Did that for a while and then settled down in Canada. And then I met Jeff Dillon from Dillon Small Batch Distillers. He came on board before he opened up the distillery in Beamsville here with me at a winery, Angels Gate Winery. And then, so yeah, I kind of got a bit of an interest in spirits, hanging out with Jeff. He kind of tickled that bug in me. And after working in the wine industry for, at that point, I think it was like 15 years, I wanted to settle down with a family. So I made a jump into whiskey when the Gretzky Distillery first opened back in 2017. I came across there as the assistant distiller and then was very quickly running the place from the production side. Joshua Beach was the first master distiller and blender at Gretzky, but the program took off very quickly and we were pretty undermanned, to be honest. So he was quite busy. So production side was something I've done all my life. So it was something I loved getting my teeth into. And then he moved on to some more things back in 2020 and I took over the program at Gretzky then. And yeah, it's been fun. It's been busy, but it's been good.
You really have quite the background. That's fantastic, Tim. And Carrie and I met you out at the distillery, and you gave us a fantastic tour. And love what you guys are doing there. So that's really cool.
I don't know what the numbers are anymore because COVID's kind of screwed up the tracking of visitors. But we believe so at one point it was probably one of the most visited estates in North America, excluding distilleries, because I think Buffalo Trace sees about 750,000 a year, and we see about 500,000 a year through that property. So from a wine aspect, it's one of the most visited, and it's probably up there for whiskey as well.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's a great location. Everybody should get out there and see it. All right, so master distiller, master blender. Sounds
Yes.
pretty prestigious, almost Jedi-like, Tim. So how did you go from, so you talked a little bit about it, but how did you get into actually becoming what is like a master distiller or blender?
The key part of that is you've kind of got to think about what it means to each company. Someone like Last Straw Distillery here in Ontario, for example, their master distiller and blender is going to be probably the owner as well. They're also going to be the retail associate because they're such a small production facility. So it will change as you get bigger and bigger. And again, just referencing Buffalo Trace because they're a big distillery, but obviously being a master distiller and a master blender, they're some exceptional titles that take a very, very long time to work up to. So back to kind of my background and how I got to where I am, I think that part of it is I've spent my whole life, as I mentioned, making beverage alcohol. So going from, wine to whiskey, everything's been quite a smooth transition for me. It's because a lot of it is about when I think about whiskey and I think about wine, and even for a while there, we took on beer and helped run that program for a bit as well. It is about making really good products, but making really well balanced products. And So it's something kind of I've taken through over my entire career along with me on that whole journey. So to answer your question, is there an accreditation or is it a marketing title or what is it? It's going to mean something different to every distillery. Typically, it's a marketing title that marketing uses a way to drum up somebody, but I'm pretty humble when it comes to all that. And as I mentioned, I just love making booze and I've done it all my life. So I actually changed my title back to head distiller and blender when I took on the role, and they've changed it back again to master distiller and blender. So it's just one of those things. You take it and I'll wear it. We do make, a lot of really, really good products, and volume wise, we're churning out a lot. And in the coming years, you're going to see some really, really cool stuff coming out of the estate itself as well, which is going to be fun.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, Tim, you're definitely a master to us. Love it.
Cheers.
All right. So, okay. So master distiller, master blender, everyone's going to think Tim just sits around all day drinking. So what do you actually do? Like, what's a day in the life of a master distiller blender?
Yeah, I mean, you're balancing a lot and depends on the time of year. So a lot of it is forecasting budgets. It's a lot of math. It's a lot of scheduling, all that kind of stuff, and it is a lot of logistics because you're trying to look at times, 5 to 6 year forecast because that's what you want to age your liquid for, and so you're constantly trying to move those around. And when you're pulling things out of barrel, when you're putting things in, it changes with the season. Sometimes we can be crazy going filling casks, and other weeks will be just other months we'll be going crazy emptying them. So for us, for me personally, we're a really, really small team. There's only 3 people, myself and 2 others, who are the core of the distilling program. Matthew Orton's my distiller. He runs the production side down in Niagara Lake. And then we've got Mark Evangelista. He's my blending and maturation assistant. So he runs the warehouse and puts all the blends together for me. And so I kind of help oversee both of those guys and help maintain the schedules and obviously all flavor profiles and things like that. And from a sensory aspect, we look at. But yeah, so to answer your question, because I didn't really do it, it's all encompassing, particularly someone at my level, our production size. But as I said, for other people, as I said, they can be running the retail store on weekends. It can be anything depending on the size of you. And I mean, you look at now, like someone like Don Livermore, for example. I mean, his role has changed dynamically in the past 4 or 5 years, where he's doing a lot more PR now than he ever did before. So that's always a part of it too, where you kind of get out in front of people and do bits and pieces. So that's always the fun stuff, though.
Nice. Oh, that's awesome. So you're kind of a master of all.
Exactly. Yeah. There's obviously
Awesome.
a lot of sampling and drinking in there. I'm not going to lie. I mean, when I took over the program, we hadn't really had a good look into the warehouse at that stage. So we had sampled every single barrel that we'd laid down, about 1,600 or 1,700 at that point, and we tasted through all of them in 3 days, which was pretty mad.
Wow.
We were pretty tired by the end of it.
I
It was
guess.
a pretty full on few days, but we had to do it because we didn't really have a good sense of where the warehouse was going at that stage because we were quite young. We only had started laying down liquid in 2017. So when I took over in early 2020, we'd only be coming into that 3 year age of being legal. For me, I was pushing again. I don't believe in releasing something because you can release it. You want to release it because it's ready to be released.
So I was going to ask you what's the best part, but I think I just heard it.
Yeah, and I mean,
What did you 1,600 barrels in 3 days?
yeah. I mean that's fun too, but it's fun getting out to consumers as well and customers, like having even just people like yourself come by the distillery and checking it out and spending time talking to people. I've obviously got a passion for beverage alcohol, or I wouldn't be doing this still after so long, and I just love talking about it. So that's and I love educating and things like that when it comes to whiskey too. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, you can totally see that, Tim. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, so blender or distiller? So really, what's the difference there?
It's more I guess the production side. So when you think about a distiller, I mean, even again, it depends on the size of your distillery. Sometimes they might own the department from grain to the first new make spirit or fresh fill, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, that they may own that, and then the blender would own the other side of the business where you're constantly making sure you're hitting production schedules, disgorging schedules, and obviously your flavor profile and hitting those. So that is a lot more of the drinking in the blending side, because when you might have a patch where like for example last year we had a really wet year here and the wheat wasn't of great quality. So if you're a vodka producer that used a lot of wheat, you may have to change your profile a bit, and it may change as the year goes on. So you're constantly looking at your components and making sure that those components equal the final product, which is typically in Canada a blended whiskey. But even if it's not a blended whiskey, you're still that's the thing. Realistically, even though you're not a blended whiskey, you're always blending, whether it be to release a product that's just regular, like a Maker's Mark or something like that. It's still a blend at the end of the day. But yeah, you are doing a lot of that, which is quite fun. But yeah, so distiller or blender, and as for me, I always enjoyed the production side. I still do. The blender side's good, but a lot more politics in big companies, which makes it less fun. I love just getting to go work the stills first thing on a Monday morning at 6 a.m. and no one's bothering you, and you can just kind of sit there and play around. It's nice.
That's awesome. That's probably like one of the best times. I can totally see that. Okay,
Yeah.
so then, but who makes the biggest difference in the finished product then?
Realistically, because we're talking about a finished product, the closest influence that a finished product would have would be from the blender,
Okay.
because they're the last person that's going to touch that before it's in a bottle. So that could be not necessarily a good influence. It could be a bad influence too, depending on who's taking on that role. But to get to that point, the biggest influence is the distiller because they're the ones creating the product that you're laying in barrel that you can't change when it comes out of barrel. So their role is very critical as well. I don't think any one is more important than the other. I think the blender being the final gatekeeper of the product, making sure that you're making sure it's consistent, or if it was consistently bad previously, making sure it's better now is very, very important. So a very, very good blender is, I think, imperative, but you don't want to have to inherit bad product because then the best blender can't make something out of horrible, horrible whiskey. So yeah, they're both equally as important.
Okay, so then thinking about like that finished product, we go to the store and we grab a bottle, we try it, love it, don't like it, indifferent to it, what all that kind of thing. So
Mhm.
what makes the biggest difference on the finish? Is it the mash bill? Is it the cask that it's finished in?
All of the above. I like to think about whiskey, the flavor profile of whiskey being influenced by 4 to 5 places, depending on how you want to round it. The first part would be your grains, whether it be rye, wheat, barley, corn. That's going to be one of your major influences on flavor. The second being mashing and fermentation. Huge, huge. I've had some distilleries from within Canada who I've tried, who I know don't have fermentation control, and you can see it in those whiskies, which is unfortunate because they do a very good process after that, but at that stage they don't. So that is a massive influence. Then the still and distillation method is probably another one of your biggest chunks. And then maturation itself. So cask, temperature, climate, all that stuff is going to have a huge influence. So yeah, I mean you can always try and dolly things up by putting it in some Oloroso cask for fuse at the end. But I think again, it's all a part of that jigsaw that makes the whiskey at the end of the day. Every single part of that kind of goes in when it comes to flavor. And I think people forget about things like fermentation and even just mashing procedures. Are you mashing in at 50 degrees or 80 degrees and what your kind of mash regime is? That can be quite important. And I think sometimes that can be more important than things like whether it's made from corn or rye or whatnot as well.
That's cool. Those are the things that I totally geek out on, and
Yeah.
looking for and seeing how it was matured, all that kind of cool stuff. I think the cask probably isn't as big of a difference in the final
I mean,
product.
it depends if you're talking virgin oak compared to, once used American bourbon. That's the flavor profiles on those are very drastically different. Like I typically put into 50% virgin oak and 50% American bourbon when I'm doing big barrel fills, partially due to cost. I'd love to put everything into virgin oak, but it's just so expensive. Once used American bourbon are getting expensive as well now, so it might get to that point where the economics make sense. But that is a huge difference. But like whether it's a beam barrel versus something from Canada. Like it's not that probably once they get quite a lot of depletion out of them, there's not much to them. But obviously things like sherry casks have a huge influence as well if you're doing some finishing. So they can have a huge impact. I think even the climate probably even more so. I think you guys did Cavalan the other week and you look at the color on some of that and they get it in 5 or 6 years just due to the climate. So everything, again, all those parts together working will whether decide whether you're going to make a really good whiskey or a really bad one.
Yeah, for sure. I didn't have this in the questions, but it kind of just came up in my head. So Niagara on the Lake is really well known for the temperature for
Hmm.
growing grapes and all that. So how have you
Hmm.
found that has affected any of the maturing in the casks?
Like a lot of other regions in the world, Canadians believe that we've got, one of the best climates for
Of
maturing
course.
whiskey. When whiskey ages, particularly in Canada, we've got changes in season. So those extreme colds, those extreme hot weather summers, the whiskey's going to go in and out of the cask. And what that gives us is a lot more of those aging potentials. It draws more and more out of the wood. Now, there is people in the US who do what they call cycling or forced aging, and they'll actually change their warehouse temperatures, a couple of times a year. So during winter, if it's cold, they'll force age by adding another cycling to warm up the liquid to get it back in and out into the cask again. So yeah, so we do have quite good temperatures to be able to do that. In reality, does it happen? For us, I would say yes, because our warehouse is small enough. We've got a 4,000 barrel warehouse, so about 2,000 barrels on each side of our main warehouse. And we have a lot of air circulation in there. But if you think about the big guys, Diageo, Crown Royals, or Hiram Walker down in Windsor, like their warehouses are massive. You got 25,000 barrels in one of those warehouses. So you think about how much packed in 25,000 barrels is barrel in the middle, is it getting a change in temperature? Probably not.
Yeah.
So it does depend on your warehouse, but we do have a great climate in Canada to be able to get whiskey to move in and out of the oak and get some really good aging. But as we talked about before with Cavalan, right, like they're getting it from extreme heat rather than from changes in season, right? Whereas the Scots, they're not getting much aging at all, and that's why you're waiting until your 18s
Yeah.
to really see a difference in Scotch whiskey.
Canada was always well known for their whiskeys, right? So that's awesome. Good stuff. Okay. All right. So, Tim, can we get a little
Yes,
inside scoop here? So, what are you
sure.
working on next? Any surprises in the Stiller cask for us?
Yeah, so I mean, we've been, as I mentioned, we started distilling back in 2017, and we've haven't really released an estate only product yet. We started releasing whiskey in 2016. We opened the building in 2017. So I'll let you do the math.
Yeah.
So we still have partners that we distill with. So we source casks and source grain and all that kind of stuff, and we will then work with them to help distill and age for us. But then, so from the estate side, some of that's been petering through some of the products, but not 100% on its own. So next year, we're going to start with seeing the release of what we call the craftsmanship series for 99. I don't even know whether I'm allowed to say this because it's almost out of the bag.
Yeah.
But the craftsmanship series will be coming out next year. We're super pumped about it. So the first one we'll be releasing will be 100% rye. So that's all from that estate property. And then we've got a few other ones kind of we're still playing with coming down. And I've got a few more that I'm hoping to play with some more to release. Like there's some really cool stuff that we've got in the warehouse now that we can start to play with, whether it be a full grain release or doing some other fun finishes. So we've got a bit more of a runway now to start releasing some of the really cool stuff. So I think if anyone kind of has given Gretzky a miss in the past because they think we're a big commercial distillery and we're a big, blending distillery, I think that you'll be pleasantly surprised once these products start coming out because yeah, you won't want to sleep on some of them because they're not gonna last long and they don't have a lot of casks coming down behind them. So there's going to be a few that come out hopefully in the next 12 months that may not see the light of day again and will sell out pretty quickly. So keep an eye out for those ones.
I have your number on speed dial, Tim. Because when we did the tour with you, some of those experimental ones that you gave us the taste of, man, I'm still dreaming about them. They're
Yeah, it
so
was actually funny. I was cleaning up some of my bar this week. I've just because obviously I actually do a lot of work from this
okay.
bar when I'm doing my blending. It's the nicest, well, usually the quietest place during the day compared to going in the office. So it's quite nice to do it here. But then I have a lot of liquid here as well. So I was going through cleaning up a lot of it to take back to work, and I found some of the old oats samples that I
Mm.
had there, and even from like 12 months ago, they were looking sensational, and that's going to be 6 years old in February and still won't be released just yet. So it's only getting better, which is going to be fun.
Oh man, I am still dreaming about that oat. Oh, Tim, Tim.
It's a
All
fun
right.
whiskey.
Oh man, that's fantastic. And you know what? The best part of it is the story that you tell to go along with it, but we'll leave that for another time.
We'll save that for a release party. There you
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
go.
Awesome. Okay, so what's your go-to cocktail when you're gonna make something from your 99 series?
I quite enjoy a whiskey sour, and the double oaked goes really well in a whiskey sour. Just particularly with that kind of smokiness to it, it kind of makes the whiskey sour almost has a mezcal feel. It's kind of weird what happens to again when whiskey changes pH, the flavor aroma is going to change with it too. So that one's quite fun. And then if I'm ever using, it's a whiskey one, but espresso martinis with the 99 is always good. And I've found a way to make that melted ice magic stuff. So I make a nice rimmer now. It's full on. But yeah, they're probably my two go-tos, I think, on a Saturday afternoon at the moment,
Nice.
anyway.
We'll have to share your recipe afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Tim, this is probably the question you get all the time. Working
Mhm.
at Wayne Gretzky's, do you know Wayne? Have you met Wayne? Do you have him on speed dial?
I have met Wayne a couple of times. I'm not sure whether he'd remember me or not, but we've done some photo shoots and some PR gigs and stuff
Yeah.
together before. So I have met him. Very, very nice man. Had some, especially when he came out of the estate, he's came out and spent time with just the bartenders on a Sunday afternoon, and no one knew he was going to be there. It was kind of cool that he did that, and but so yes, but I have met him. I don't have him in speed dial. We do a lot of our business with the Gretzky family through Glenn, his brother, who's an amazing bloke. Get along with him really, really well. So yeah, we do a lot of it through him. But then Wayne will come out and support when required. So hopefully we'll see him maybe out next year when we get some of these new whiskies off. It's funny. A lot of people think with these celebrity brands, when you say you run it through the family, that it's just a marketing. But in this case, honestly, like we still taste through these with the family. If Wayne doesn't want something out there, we don't do it. I don't think we've ever had an instance where we haven't kind of all agreed that this was the direction we should take. So fingers crossed that never happens because I don't want to be in that conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? That's kind of refreshing to hear though, because like you said, there's a lot of celebrity endorsed products out there, but the celebrity is just the name on it. So that's pretty cool. So I saved the most important question to last, Tim, because
Yes.
this is Tabletop Tastings, where we pair a whiskey with a board game. So do you
Okay.
play tabletop games? And if so, what's your favorite board game?
One of the funnest ones I love playing with my son, which we played back in Australia when I was there last year, and I used to play all the time as a kid. It was called Splat. Now, it was a game where you made your little pieces out of Play-Doh, but there was like a little thing, this would pop these little bugs out. And
Okay.
so you'd make them out of Play-Doh and they were your pieces. And then as you go around the board, you've got to get three of them all the way through. I think it was three of them all the way through the board without getting splattered. So like if someone lands on a splat spot, they're allowed to flip over the card and all those colors get splattered. So if you've got your bug on one of those, you get to splat them all and it's pretty much just luck. But there's a little bit of skill on which ones you want to move forward and up and whether you want to go to safe spots and all that kind of jazz. But from just a replayability and really, really quick too, you can be in and out quite quickly. So that was probably, yeah, especially growing up, that was one that we used to play as a family quite a lot. So yeah. Splat, and I can't find it anywhere here. I
Yeah,
haven't been
that's
able to find it.
it sounds kind of familiar, but maybe that's just because
Yeah,
that's what I do for a living, where I actually play
I
splat
everything,
as an
every
exterminator.
board game sounds familiar after a while because you probably
Yeah.
played so many. But I did look for it once we came back, and I don't think it exists anymore in any form of retail. I think it's just your eBay Pirates is basically the only place you're going to get it, and I'm not paying $200 for a game of Splat. That's
Yeah,
for
yeah.
sure.
That's cool. Yeah, you know what? All of those family memories make things enjoyable.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's awesome. Perfect. Okay. All right, Tim. So if people want to follow you and want to keep up to date with what you've been doing, where should they go?
Sure. I never plug myself, so I don't even know my own handle on Instagram. I think I'm Distilling Hobbit still these days. But yeah, you can, and either that or just go to the Wayne Gretzky Estates Instagram, follow them. That'll be probably the first place you'll hear about all our amazing products, or sign up for the Wine and Whiskey Club at
Yeah.
Gretzky's. Not only we make great whiskey, we make great wine as well. I wouldn't just say that because I used to be a winemaker, and the guys do an amazing job with the Gretzky products. So yeah, definitely worth signing up for that, and you get special perks of getting some of these releases too, because I know that they'll all get first dibs at basically everything we release.
I can't thank you enough. Yeah, you're totally entertaining. And again, it's you're my first master distiller or blender that I've ever met, and you're totally not a letdown.
Awesome.
All
Well,
right.
I'm glad I wasn't.
Yeah. Thanks, Tim. So I'm Steve, and my guest tonight was Tim Wilson. Thanks for watching. This is another episode of Tabletop Tastings. Thanks, Tim.
No worries. Thanks, guys.